The truth that Douglas Murray doesn't want you to know is that he is directly an Israeli asset.
Well, I'm joined now by Douglas Murray, who's on the Gaza border. Douglas, let me ask you first of all, why have you felt the need to go there?
Well, I've covered every Israeli conflict since the 2006 Lebanon war.
This is not journalism. We are talking about people who claim to be independent, critical thinkers, offering their services as assets of a foreign power. So much so that he received an award from the Israeli president for services in propaganda to Israel during the genocide in Gaza. Douglas Murray was gushing with pride when he said it brings him great joy to align with Israel. While Murray has recently become more vociferous in his support for the genocidal Israel, his relationship is far from new. Over a decade ago, in 2014, at the time of a genocidal onslaught against Gaza, Douglas Murray rallied round to provide his services to Israel. In a leak of emails from Israel's ambassador to the United Nations at the time, Ron Prosner, it has been revealed that Douglas Murray was drafting speeches for this Israeli government figure. In the email, Douglas Murray wrote to Ron Prosner, "Dear Ron, very good to speak earlier. I am pasting in here my first draft ideas. It's probably slightly long, and it's possible I have put in some more diplomatic things than needed, but I think I have got all the points discussed." The title of the email was Draft, and it included a speech for Ron Prosner to deliver at the United Nations in defense of Israel and its activities in Gaza. And in the speech, Douglas Murray even used the following phrasing: "We Israelis have learnt to live with the realities around us. We know who we are." Does Douglas Murray, the alleged British patriot, know who he is? He's an asset of a foreign power. There are more sycophantic emails sent from Douglas Murray to Israel's ambassador at the UN, where he later says that Prosner is doing wonderful work as ever. He also goes to great lengths to prove his loyalty to Israel in these emails and boasts about his involvement in a fundraising campaign for Israeli military occupation forces with an organization previously exposed here at Double Down News, the Association for the Well-Being of Israel's Soldiers. That's a charity active in this country, which is actively materially aiding Israel's genocidal campaign in Gaza through support of Israeli soldiers.
Thank you guys so much for everything. We appreciate it. We're out here working hard every day. We love your support. Thank you.
Douglas Murray goes to great lengths in the email to explain his role in aiding this campaign and that he hosted an event which raised over $1 million for the Israeli military. And Douglas Murray made sure to comment on how wonderful the soldiers were. Along with the Douglas Murray emails, you also had David Frum, the well-known George Bush speechwriter, for coming up with the phrase, the axis of evil, offering his services as a speechwriter to Ron Prosner and sending him drafts for speeches to be made at the United Nations. At the very same time, he was a journalist at The Atlantic, supposedly writing a profile on Ron Prosner. In addition to that, you have Pamela Gross, a CNN employee, stating her intention to raise funds for Israel's Iron Dome. We are talking about people who claim to be independent voices, offering their services as assets of a foreign power. Douglas Murray is no different. He wants to tell you to go and fight your neighbor while he works for a genocidal power many, many miles away.
Douglas Murray, so powerful to talk to you there on the Gaza border. Stay safe out there.
That's right. Will do. Very good to see you, Piers.
Thanks, Douglas.
Douglas Murray says you can't talk about Gaza unless you've been.
Have you been to the crossing points? You've never been.
You don't need to visit genocide to know what it is. You do not need to touch the hand of a dead child to know they are dead.
I have a journalistic rule of trying never to talk about a country even in passing unless I've at least been there.
I've been to Gaza. The people I met, the places I visited, no longer exist, thanks to Douglas Murray and the army he was embedded with. Not long into the genocide, Douglas Murray attempted to raise money for the Israeli military forces in London. This was such an unpopular idea that the employees of the theatre tasked with staffing the event refused to work even for triple the pay. Douglas Murray characteristically responded with nothing but disdain for those members of the working class.
If you're an usher in a theatre, well, do your darn job. It's what you're employed for.
Douglas Murray served as director of the Henry Jackson Society for many years. In that role, he was alongside the executive director of the Henry Jackson Society, Alan Mendoza. Mendoza is simultaneously a president of the JNF. The JNF is the largest settlement building body in occupied Palestine, and on its board of patrons it includes Benjamin Netanyahu and Isaac Herzog. The Henry Jackson Society, which employed Douglas Murray for many years, in fact shares funders with illegal Israeli settlements and the Friends of the IDF charity. Former Israeli ambassador at the United Nations, Dori Gold, and Israel lobbyist Natan Sharansky are both on the board of the Henry Jackson Society. At least 2 former employees of the Henry Jackson Society took up jobs at the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So this relationship of Douglas Murray with Israel is far from new. Douglas Murray is a neoconservative at heart.
I believe that neoconservatism is the most valuable and indeed necessary political outlook of our time.
To such an extent that he literally wrote the book on neoconservatism and quote-unquote why we need it. The neocons, represented by Richard Perle, by Paul Wolfowitz, and others in the Bush administration, were responsible for the most destructive wars of our lifetime. The killing of over 1 million people in Iraq, the displacing of tens of millions of people in Afghanistan, and the legacy of what we live through today. What Douglas Murray is struggling to internalize is the fact that these ideas, which he is such a deep believer in and proselytizer of, are deeply unpopular, even with target populations of his psychological warfare. The Trump base, the MAGA base, is no friend of the neocons, as made apparent by Trump's speech in Saudi Arabia.
The gleaming marvels of Riyadh and Abu Dhabi were not created by the so-called nation builders, neocons, or liberal nonprofits. The so-called nation builders wrecked far more nations than they built.
Pity Douglas Murray as he claws around to try and cling to the oxygen of his existence. Constant racist war against the inferior other. Douglas Murray will advocate fiercely for wars all over the world.
I always put it that there was, and I don't mean this flippantly, there was no reason not to invade Iraq.
And then, when tens of millions of people are displaced and seek to find safe refuge, Douglas Murray will militate against those people too, as he called to make things harder across the board for Muslims in Europe. You have no interest in these wars, and you have more in common with those displaced by Douglas Murray's wars than with Douglas Murray himself. Douglas Murray has spent years theatrically claiming that he stands on the side of freedom of speech. But now the mask is off. He wants to cancel everyone that's not an expert, but especially those that advocate for the Palestinian cause. Don't ever forget, today he might go for pro-Palestinians, but tomorrow he'll go for you. It is important that we take these ideas head on and investigate the powerful. And there are so few places that we can do that other than Double Down News. Please do support Double Down News right now on Patreon.